Hello, folks. Daniel here with Driving and Dragons, back with another D&D Reacts video. I'm sure you can already see here on the screen that we have got one generic Ginny D pulled up here. So, y'all forgive me a little bit if I'm a little slow on the draw today and maybe even a little muted because I am not feeling the best right now. I think I got a little spot of bad food this morning that's been messing with me a bit. But anyway, I was on the prowl trying to flash out stuff for intelligence as a dump stat tomorrow. I'm recording this on Sunday. And, going through all the usual stuff. I didn't have a lot of stuff that just popped up normally for me. So I was, trolling through the usual suspects to see if there was anything worth talking about. Well, that's what led me over here to generic Ginny D. Because guess what? Old Ginny D has posted a video, and her video is why I hate alignment and what I use instead. So, before immediately scraping it so I can do what needs to be done tomorrow on intelligence as a dump stat, I thought I should probably just go ahead and react to this one. Why? Well, I am kind of known as the alignment guy, and I'm just dying to see all the reasons why she doesn't like alignment. I have a strong feeling that probably 90% of it comes from her having no understanding of alignment or how it's supposed to work. I mean, this is Ginny D we're talking about, and good old generic Ginny is, well, I mean, she's been in the hobby for like a whopping 15 minutes, and all of her experience is post Critical Role 5e. So I have a feeling that her grasp on alignment is extremely narrow, and we're going to find out just how narrow it is here in a minute. Or we're going to find out that I'm totally wrong and I should have given her the benefit of the doubt. One way or another, we're all going to learn something here today. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, a couple of things before we get cracking here. My 7 keys to effective game design is live now. The first video, the introduction to it, and it's starting to pick up some steam, but you ought to check it out. And I will be doing individual videos on each of the 7 keys. For members and for my patrons, you're also going to start getting a feed of shorts and various other little tidbits about some bonus tips that I had. And I'm hoping, I'm reaching out and doing some invites now. I'm hoping to get some of these designers that inspired that series to be on Driving the Conversation to discuss those keys in depth, so that this will turn into series of videos as well as a series of interviews and streams that I hope can really help some people who might maybe want to make a game. Anyway, we also have all the usual regular stuff, like, hype, share, subscribe, hit the little hype button, all that fun jazz. Leave a super chat or a super thanks if you're feeling froggy, want to help out the channel with some of the projects we're working on. Memberships, Patreon, that all goes to that too. But really, let's push that subscriber count. See if you can get some buddies to come over here and take a look and subscribe if they like what they see. Because if I can get to 1,000, then we can get a little bit of ad revenue trickling in and make these things go a little bit faster, and maybe even possibly pick up some other revenue streams to help get those car projects rolling. If you haven't got a copy of Corvid Codex Volume 1 yet, make sure you grab a copy. It's links will be in the description here, and I'll throw them up on screen as well. But go get yourself a really nice high-quality paperback. I just did the first set of revisions on it, so a couple of minor corrections have been made, and we might even have global distribution here in the near future. So you'll be able to get it in all the various places you like to buy books, but buying it directly from Lulu helps me and helps the authors the most. But anyway, we're going to get cracking now, and we're going to see why it is that Ginny D hates alignment and probably why she doesn't understand it.
I am not a fan of alignment in D&D. I know, brave, controversial. No one has ever complained about alignment before. I'll be accepting my trophy in the form of comments telling me that I just don't understand it. Now, I don't think alignment...
She's about to get a lot of it. She just doesn't understand it because I'm almost 100% certain that she doesn't.
Alignment is completely useless. I think it's a helpful tool for dungeon masters, especially when you need to make quick decisions about a monster or a faction or an NPC who didn't exist until your player said, "You there, boy," in a crowded marketplace. But when it comes to player characters, that's when I think alignment is at best unhelpful and at worst actively harmful.
Okay, so right off the bat, she has got things entirely backwards. So let's go through this. And hopefully I'm not going to be stopping every 5 seconds to correct her on something, because she's absolutely right. She does not understand alignment or how it works based off of this conversation or based off of this comment by itself. It's extraordinarily helpful for player characters because it helps you get into the mindset of somebody who does not think the way you think on a fundamental level. She is very clearly approaching this from that very baseline, how do I make my decisions perspective, which is totally wrong. Maybe she'll correct me on that and she'll be wrong in some other way that somehow is just her missing the 10,000 yard view, but I doubt it. It is helpful for DMs. It's very helpful for game masters to kind of get the idea of how their characters are going to behave, how NPCs are going to behave, and that sort of thing, because it informs their mindset when they're presented with some kind of challenge from the player characters. Where Jenny is missing this is that she has a very flawed view of how you're supposed to play characters in these TTRPGs. It is more projecting yourself into the game and not wanting to have to think as another human being, make this character think as you. And projection is terrible for TTRPGs.
And I'm not just talking about when the words "it's what my character would do" leave a player's mouth and I have to get out my sword. I know this isn't exactly an unpopular opinion, but it is one that people tend to get kind of heated about, so I don't really talk about it much. But recently I got a chance to read The Zeitgeist of Pop Culture, Dungeons & Dragons, which is a collection of essays that look at D&D through a psychological lens. And in one of these essays, 2 people with PhDs basically said, "Hey Ginny, you're correct, and also very smart." The authors also have a suggestion for a new, better way to handle morality in D&D, and it's super easy to use. But the wild part is you don't actually need a brand new system, because it turns out D&D already had a system for morality that worked way better than alignment. They just got rid of it, and you can bring it back. I've always had beef with alignment for 3 main reasons. I think it's oversimplified, I think it's subjective, and ultimately I think it's just kind of useless as a roleplay tool.
She is wrong on all 3. And I'm really curious to know what these quote unquote expert psychologists that she's talking about have to say, because it sounds like they're fucking idiots too. So it's not subjective. It is definitively objective. And in every single, especially the 9 alignment system, the 3 alignment system is more of a faction system, which is a totally different approach. However, it has to be objective. And in every single situation where it is presented in a game rule book, it clearly states that it must be set to an objective standard. Okay? That right there completely wipes out her back end. The second point completely wiped out. She is just flat out wrong, as we would expect from somebody who only recently read the rule books by her own admission. Then we can also turn around and we can look at this. Oh, it's oversimplified, because it is a core base understanding of a character's ethos. It's not meant to critically examine every single decision. It is meant to be influenced by nuance in the real world, but it is a core design of how your character's brain works, which is a very, very simplified thing.
Let me explain what I mean. First up, it's oversimplified. If you're already typing an angry comment, I am begging you to let me reach the end of my thought. I promise I'm getting there. Or don't, I guess. Engagement is engagement. Real people are complicated, and there may be no area in which we are more complicated than our principles. We all hold countless beliefs, some strong and some weak, some subconscious and some we chose, sometimes even beliefs that conflict with each other. Maybe you value kindness and you also value honesty, and then your friend gets a terrible haircut. The kindness value and the honesty value are at each other's throats right now. Not to mention that we don't always act in accordance with our values. I don't know about you, but my strongly held belief that most people are doing their best and deserve grace is aspirational. Tends to go out the window the minute somebody cuts me off in traffic. Oh, come on, this is such a straw man argument. Alignment was never meant to be some kind of behavioral straitjacket. The books literally say that. That's true. D&D rulebooks have repeatedly specified that alignment is meant to describe the way your character generally acts, not force them into behaving a certain way all the time. But I would argue that if the community keeps misunderstanding this tool, despite your clarification for literal decades, maybe that's a sign that the tool is not communicating its purpose well. If you redesign your bathroom with a bunch of abstract, hyper-modern fixtures, and eventually you have to tape a sign over the sink that says, "This is a sink, do not poop in it," at some point you gotta stop blaming the guests and start questioning the sink design, you know? The alignment table might make for fun memes, but good, evil, and neutral are not even close to nuanced enough to describe something as messy and contradictory as human belief systems. And using those terms as game mechanics encourages that kind of two-dimensional interpretation. The two moral philosophers who wrote this essay agree with me. Well, kind of. They're actually saying a way smarter version of this. But we'll get to that in a moment, because first it's time for the most lawful evil part of any YouTube video, the sponsorship.
So before she gets into her sponsorship, you can already see the problems that she's having here. She's way zoomed in. She even points out the fact that she's wrong right there off of the bat when it says the rule books clearly say that she's incorrect in the way she's assessing this. And her turn is to blame the mechanic because a bunch of players don't bother to understand it. And that is a problem. As a matter of fact, to give her a little bit of her flowers here, to give her the grace that I press X to doubt on her giving others, that is the best argument against alignment. I've actually said this in debates before online about alignment, that the best argument against alignment is that because the majority of players either lack the ability to think in that kind of big picture view and to understand that concept, to think conceptually that way, or simply do not want to dedicate the time necessary to understand it, that is the best argument for removing it from the game. Is here is a system that you're just not going to use. And you see this all the time with Rule Zero stuff with mechanical rules. And that kind of plays into the same principle where there are a whole encumbrance rules being a big one. That encumbrance gets hand waved a lot in D&D and in other TTRPGs. Why? Because encumbrance is a lot of times just a chore. And it's been hand waved 100,000 times because there's so many different ways it doesn't make sense because it's an abstract and it interferes with what people want to be there for. And in a lot of cases, it's like, well, it doesn't really need to be there. However, you also have to supplement it with something, and you have to supplement it with something because it turns out if you just get rid of encumbrance, the next thing you know, your players have 10 of everything to solve every solution, and they no longer have to practice practical resource management because they can carry, 19 campsites with them and just kind of leave them up all over the place. And they got a whole pack of 10-foot poles and 9 battering rams. And one of them's carrying a water clock around, which weighs like 200 pounds. And it becomes an issue. Or they're hauling back, 500,000 gold pieces from a dragon's hoard in their backpack. And in a way, it's, well, the characters could just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And this saves us the time of having to make them do that over and over and over and over and over again. But at the same time, it also eliminates somebody followed them there and found out where the rest of the horde was, then came back with a bunch of people and they found out they killed a dragon and got one load of treasure out of his horde. And then when they went back for the second, an enterprising thief followed them, and now they don't have a horde anymore. There's all kinds of things that they could miss there. So just like with the encumbrance, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater simply because they don't want to take the time to make sure that the players understand it and make sure that the GM implements it properly. And then, of course, Generic Jenny is all about hand wave anything that's inconvenient.
Don't worry, I've done my best to shift that firmly to chaotic. From outer space. The essay is called The Critical Failure of Alignment as Morality, Reflections on Virtue and the Psychology of Roleplay. As we all know, an essay's insightfulness is directly proportionate to the length of its title, so you know this one's going to be good. The authors, Dr. James M. Okapel and Dr. David J. Perlman, introduce the idea of thin and thick moral concepts. Stick with me here, it's going to sound a little complicated at first, but it's actually pretty straightforward. According to philosophers, there are 3 features that information can have. First,
just to say this while I'm thinking about it before she gets into this, her understanding of this article, she's reflecting everything in the world here as moral. And as anybody who's watched this channel for any length of time understands, alignment is not simply moral. Alignment is also ethical. But we are once again getting into the weeds of not understanding the concept of a 10,000 yard view. From here on Earth, every planet is a dot of light, if you can see it at all. Even when you start to get closer, it's just a sphere floating out in space. Yes, when you get really close, calling, these are all planets, it's like, wow, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of planets. But from far away, there's not really that much of a difference in them because you're looking at it from a 10,000 yard view. Your character is Jupiter. He's big. He has a ton of gravity. He's made predominantly of gas. He has a ton of storms. He has the Great Red Spot. This other character is Saturn, who's also made of gas and has rings and has a hexagon-shaped storm at the top. And that character over there is Pluto, which is essentially a small rock that in some cases doesn't even, they call it a dwarf planet now. They can decide whether or not it's a planet or not anymore. But from far away, they're all planets because that's how far away you should be viewing things with alignment. From far away, they're all, we'll just say, lawful good. It's only when you get up close that you start seeing the differences in how that lawful good plays out for each of those characters, but they're all informed by that base nature.
Descriptive, which means a statement that is true or false. For example, Ginny is holding a sword. True. A statement can also be evaluative, which basically means it's an opinion about something's worth or importance, a value judgment. For example, Ginny looks cool. I mean, I know what I think, but that doesn't make it true. Finally, statements can be prescriptive. This is an instruction, something that tells you what to do. For example, you should think Ginny looks cool. It's only natural. When a moral concept is thin, it only has one of these 3 features. It just doesn't give us much information. Ginny is holding a sword. Okay. And? Is she threatening you? Is she showing off? Is she giving you a gift? Did you catch her in the act of decapitating someone? We just don't know. Meanwhile, a thick concept is one that includes multiple of these features, or even all 3. Calling someone generous is evaluative because we consider generosity to be a positive trait, but it's also descriptive because we know what generous means, someone who shares unselfishly. That is one thick moral concept. Okapel and Perlman argue that alignment is a thin concept. Saying the paladin is good carries almost no meaning because it's just evaluative. What makes them good? How good are they? What does a good person do? Alignment doesn't contain any information on that.
And thus we see that her vaunted PhD article writer is also wrong and has no clue how alignment works. Good is, it does include things about what you're supposed to do. Good, by definition, shows you to be selfless as a general rule. A person who is good puts others ahead of themselves. These words have meaning. They have definitions. And simply because you don't understand that abstraction, just like everything else in these games is also an abstraction. You can understand that when you roll to hit in combat, it encompasses numerous different aspects of swinging a sword at somebody, but somehow you can't understand the concept that good encompasses a general philosophy of how their brain works and what they think about first, despite the fact that the books explicitly tell you that. This is probably the 4th or 5th time in this video that Ginny D has said something. In this case, she even has it sourced by somebody else who said it. They say something that is directly contradicted in the text.
It doesn't describe what goodness is, and it doesn't prescribe how to be good. Lawful and chaotic are the same, except instead of being evaluative, they're just descriptive. It just means they either do or don't follow a set of rules, okay? What rules? The laws of this kingdom? The rules of...
Once again, I copy paste the same thing that we talked about good and evil there, that we talked about good there. No, it has to do with long-term and short-term thinking. It has to do with valuing tradition and valuing structures as a long-term benefit versus making independent, immediate situational judgments that may or may not apply to each situation. In other words, I'm getting a little bit irritated here by her. It is such a gross misunderstanding, and it actually bothers me that I know that she will get hundreds of thousands of people to watch her basically spew the most objective misunderstanding of alignment that I've seen in a long time. She may understand alignment even worse than Pointy Hat.
The game Hungry Hungry Hippos? How should we know? Reading this was very eye-opening for me because I've always felt like alignment is subjective, and this really made it clear why it feels that way. We can't even agree on what good and evil mean in real life, so how the heck are we supposed to agree on it at the D&D table? Is killing a villain evil because killing is evil, or is it good because it prevents future harm?
We're able to know what it objectively means in the game because they give you an objective definition. You don't have to agree with it in real life. I mean, I think you, in most cases, are kind of an idiot if you don't, but you don't have to. It tells you this is objectively what it is. This is good and this is evil. Whether you agree as a person or not is completely irrelevant. There is a black and white definition. Where this problem comes from is, once again, Ginny D and her ilk are not playing the role of a character. They are enforcing themselves onto a character. Instead of them playing 15 different characters in 15 different games, they are trying to play themselves in 15 different skin suits.
Is it evil to let the villain live, knowing they'll do future harm? If you could travel back in time to 1889, would you... and what does lawful even mean? Does it mean obeying the law, respecting authority, having a personal code, filing your taxes on time? Those are all very different things. And
1880, did she just say 1889 and then hold up a longsword? I'm sure that there was somewhere that it happened, but I'm pretty certain that the only swords being used in any kind of combat in 1889 would have been like a cav saber. Nobody was walking around with two-handed swords or even arming swords at that point in time. I mean, we're talking hundreds of years since they were last relevant in any kind of martial capacity.
And I only do a few of them. No, I still haven't filed my taxes. I got an extension though, does that count? The alignment system creates the illusion that these categories are objective and universal, but they really aren't. What I consider good and what you consider good are not necessarily aligned. In order to make sure we're talking about the same things, we need thicker concepts. We're probably communicating way more clearly if we both imagine what it means to be cooperative, or loyal, or self-disciplined. And of course, we can take words like that and apply them to our characters. We can say, my paladin is lawful good, and that's why she's courageous and just. But at that point, it's not the lawful good that's doing the heavy lifting.
Except it is, because that's in the definition of what lawful good means. That's the thing. This is such idiotic. I didn't read the book. It actually is very, very telling. You can see how backwards their approach is. You can see how backwards the approach of the modern gamer is to TTRPGs. She is literally taking the words of the book and applying them backwards. I can say my paladin is courageous. I can say my paladin is self-sacrificing, but then they're doing the heavy lifting, not the good, except for the part where it says good means there are things like self-sacrificing and courageous in the face of danger to serve others, which it doesn't actually, courageous is not part of the alignment. You can be cowardly and still be lawful good. But the fact of the matter is that this comes back from a concept of, I want to project my character onto the alignment instead of I want to take the alignment in order to experience somebody who thinks and feels differently than I do. And by the way, I have an objective, measured guide on how to do that in terms of here is what good means, here is what lawful means, here is what chaotic means, etc., etc.
It's the list of thicker concepts that you've associated with it. And not everyone you're playing with will think of the same concepts when they hear lawful good. This is why, in my opinion, alignment isn't actually helpful as a roleplay tool, because it doesn't actually tell you what to do. And in that case, what is it for? I am not saying players should get a list of instructions for roleplaying their character or something. Step 1, create a layered, realistic character with long-term goals. Step 2, ignore all that, adopt a bunch of awakened badgers, and open a yoga studio. But what I am saying is that this is supposed to be a tool, right? Something players can use to motivate their roleplay. If my lawful good character is obeying some unknown, undefined law, and there's no actual definition of what it means to be good, then what information is lawful good actually giving me?
She's basically repeating the same incorrect information over and over again and making the exact same mistake every single time. What was this vague good? We don't know what good is in this vague law. It's like it tells you what it is. It's called a concept. This is where the major failing comes in. And this is the biggest failing of alignment as a whole. Is alignment is a conceptual mechanic. And there's this old saying that, you know, foolish people talk about people, average people talk about things, intelligent people talk about ideas. So you would think that, you know, talking about ideas is technically above the head of most people. Talking about concepts is above the head of a lot of people. And that is the weakness of alignment, is that it is a conceptual abstraction. But that's what her problem is that she doesn't understand that these are concepts and they are clearly defined. And then she wants to project herself into it with, oh, it's subjective. No, it's not. It is not subjective. They give you an objective definition of it. They tell you what it is. They tell you the concept. It is your failing at being unable to recognize and apply an objective concept to your character. And a lot of that is because what you really want to do is you want to play Ginny D in a different skin suit. And if Ginny D in that skin suit doesn't meet that objective definition of good, all of a sudden the game is attacking you and telling you you're not good, but you want to be good because you're a good person. So that means good needs to be subjective. Well, now good is meaningless. What she's saying is correct if she were right. If any of the words coming out of her mouth were actually correct, she'd be right. The problem is that they're not. She is literally saying red is not red because it's blue, even though it's actually red.
Essay, Okapel and Perlman give a few examples from real D&D games they've played in, describing morally complex decisions and why alignment did nothing to guide those choices. One example really stuck with me because I feel like I've been in this kind of situation so many times. So a demon is kidnapping children, and sorry, I should have said in games. I've been in this situation so many times in games. So the party captures the demon and then debates whether to bring it back to town for questioning, risking it escaping on the way, or kill it immediately to prevent further harm, even if that means losing any information it might have. The authors note that both of these acts are good, but they are also mutually exclusive. You can't do both. So in this case, knowing that your character's alignment is good doesn't give you any guidance. The character who ends up taking action is the paladin, who beheads the demon, not because of his alignment, but because of his oath, to destroy evil whenever he encounters it. That oath is thick, dude. Not every character is going to take an oath, but...
Okay, so let's take a look at this. Actually, yes, the alignment does guide the decision. Well, for one, let's put aside the idiocy of we're going to take the demon back to town to cancel it, to question it, as opposed to we have the demon at our mercy right here and we'll question it here, or any number of other possible actions that could be taken. We have taken a situation and turned it into a binary where it's not one. But let's take a look at this. Yeah, those are two different good options. Okay. I would argue that maybe one of those is more chaotic and one of those is more lawful. It's kind of funny because the paladin, at least on the surface here, is making the more chaotic decision because the paladin is acting immediately in the moment with no thought to the future, no thought to the systems, when he could be saying, we should, even though this is a demon, we should be following the normal order of things, of taking them back for a proper interrogation and for trying them in front of everyone, because this will show that it doesn't matter how powerful you are, you have to follow these laws to prevent others from doing the same thing the demon did. And it may also give us the information that we need to prevent this from happening further, or to find the children, or whatever the case may be. You could almost argue that the lawful paladin would want to question them as an aspect of law, even though both are good. So she's even inherently, even in a binary example that would not actually be binary, they're still wrong. So you've got these very smart PhD psychologist people presenting a binary that's not really a binary, presenting a situation that is an example that's flawed in its premise, and completely omitting the rest of the alignment. And once again, let's zoom into the extreme narrow focus of this one singular decision, as opposed to the overall behavior and thought process of the character. It didn't inform role play because you don't understand how it works.
Okapol and Perlman introduce another thing players could use as a guide for their characters' moral choices: virtues and vices. Virtues are positive character traits that make someone likely to act in certain ways: hope, justice, temperance. Just think of what a Puritan would have named a baby in the 16th century. And vices are basically the dark mirror version: pride, greed, recklessness. You know, the fun ones. The important thing is that these are all thick moral.
Can we just take a second here that, to use the Catholic term, there are the cardinal virtues and the cardinal sins, and, greed, lust, gluttony, the 7 deadly sins, as they call them. They're also sometimes referred to as the cardinal vices. And then prudence, temperance. Notice how she points out that all the things that make you a good and moral and upstanding person somehow are not the fun ones. This is more of that self-absorbed, postmodernist, hyper-individualistic nonsense that comes out of these folks, which also leads to why they have such a problem with things like alignment, because all of the words, all of the virtues and vices that she's using here are words that appear in the explanations and descriptions of the alignments. You can find them or their synonyms directly in the text, where she is saying that there is no guidance.
Concepts. They actually contain meaningful information about how a person sees the world and what kind of actions they're likely to take. That means they can function as touchstones for roleplay. Instead of asking what a lawful good character would do in this situation, you can ask what a merciful character would do, or a responsible character, or an impulsive character. Like, let's go back to the demon example. A character with the virtue of compassion might argue that the children's safety matters more than gathering information, so the demon should die. A character driven by excellence might argue for bringing the demon back alive, because it's the option with the greatest potential accomplishment: protecting the children and getting information, if all goes well. Meanwhile, a character with the vice of pride might argue for keeping the demon alive, because failure is something that happens to other people, which is exactly the kind of confidence that usually gets somebody possessed. All of these characters might be good aligned, but with these specific virtues and vices, they all have clear guidance for their roleplay, and the conversation they have about what to do next is way more interesting. You can look up virtues and vices for helpful lists, or even add the keywords moral development if you want to avoid ending up on any church mailing lists. If you're looking for a more in-world reference list, the authors suggest looking at the domains of D&D gods, although some are more useful than others. Freedom, great. Balance, awesome. Moon, a little less helpful. Now, if all this is sounding familiar, it's probably because just 2 short years ago, 5th edition had a standard mechanic that was very similar to this. It was even printed on character sheets. I'm talking, of course, about ideals, bonds, and flaws. And then in 5.5, they removed them from the handbook and the character sheet entirely, which I was immediately upset about. And they've also completely cut the rolling tables for traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Those sections are removed from the character sheet too. Now it just has a tiny box called personality and backstory. I don't think I like that. I'm not gonna die on that hill. Maybe I'll use this new system for a few games and realize that the change is for the better. It's not. I was right. It sucks. The 2024 Player's Handbook.
I think it's funny that sucks, and she doesn't like it. And it's because she's almost there. She's like, oh, I want this information. I want this help. I want this guide for how this character might behave or might think. She's just not, she doesn't have a grasp of the concept, so she can't pull herself out further. Alignment is actually far more useful. Let's take some of the pieces that she's spoken about here. All right. I can say he's a good character. And she can go, well, he's compassionate and he's empathetic and he's values freedom and, you know, he's hopeful and all this other stuff, all these various different virtues, right? Well, she's pigeonholed her character into specific types of good, specific types of being a better person, so to speak, because she zoomed in too much. She's actually more pigeonholed than my character who's simply good. Because when I'm good as a concept, that means that I am possessed of different levels of all of these virtues. I also probably have some of these vices. I almost certainly have these vices. However, I have far more virtues, and the virtues are stronger in me than the vices because I'm good. I have a broad open field in front of me of ways to be good. She has narrowed herself into this character only has these specific good virtues. So in a wonderful piece of irony, she is further restricting her character and not advising her role play as well because she has decided to try and bust good up into all these different traits that she selects from like a menu, like she's in a video game, clicking different character traits and character minuses to get the best bonuses.
Book says that a creature's alignment broadly describes its ethical attitudes and ideals. But as we have hopefully established over the last 10 or 15 business minutes, alignment does not actually do that very effectively. Ideals, bonds, and flaws, on the other hand, are thick moral concepts that contain usable information. An ideal tells you what your character values, a bond tells you what relationships or commitments matter to them, and a flaw tells you what weakness they may fall prey to. You can even map virtues onto ideals and vices onto flaws to ensure that you're making choices for those features that are complex enough to be useful. If I'm trying to roleplay a character and make decisions moment to moment, chaotic good does nothing for me.
Here we go again. I'm trying to make my decisions moment to moment. First off, they should, because your frame of mind should be helping others and only worried about the moment, as opposed to, you know, helping others short term. As instead of, all right, well, let's see here, is it courageous or is it is it benevolent? Does my greed factor into this? It's easier to do the alignment because the alignment has more freedom. It's a broader concept. Does it help others? And now I can move into how my character does that. It's wonderfully ironic how all of her biggest problems with alignment are hurt further by her solutions and her ideas. And it's if she could just grasp the concept, she might actually understand it, because alignment actually solves all of her problems with alignment, mainly because they don't exist. She's made them up through a misunderstanding.
But knowing what my character values and why, that actually gives me direction. That's what I need in order to play a distinct character.
Also, just another piece that we got to add in here. These are the flaws and whatnot. Notice how they essentially are renaming evil and good into things that are more sanitized and less charged. So you can be a deeply flawed character, but still be a quote unquote good person, even though flaws are things like greedy, self-centered, murderous, psychopathic, and those are all clearly evil. You've taken the objective definition and distilled it down into something that doesn't hurt your fifis because you're projecting yourself onto your character instead of playing a character that is not you. And now you're mad. It's a classic example of you went and broke the toy, and now you're mad that it doesn't work the way it's supposed to anymore.
Of just making whatever decision feels correct or convenient for me as a player, and then retroactively justifying it as being in character. I am not saying alignment is worthless. I think there are plenty of reasonable arguments for how it has value in the game. But as a practical roleplay tool, yeah, I'm sorry, I think it's worthless. And if you disagree, you're gonna have to go find 2 PhDs to back you up, because right now, you're outnumbered. If you want more pop psychology about D&D, you should...
Don't you love how it all goes into an argument from an authority that clearly does not understand the game? Or at least doesn't understand the concept. That's the funny thing about it is like right from the bat, when you have your quote unquote, oh, you got to have your 2 PhDs. Well, apparently those 2 PhDs don't know how to read. And this isn't even one of those things where it's like, oh, there's Daniel being a hard ass about alignment again. Here's Daniel trying to ram things through. They are literally contradicting things that are written in black and white type in the books. They're literally saying they're literally telling you that something is the opposite of what is typed, or they are saying that something is not there that objectively is. So it doesn't matter how many letters you have after your name if you can't read the letters that are written in the book.
Should really check out this book, edited by Dr. Jared N. Kilmer and Dr. Nina Higson Sweeney. There's a great essay called The Devil You Know, all about playing evil characters that I really enjoyed. I got to read the book early because they asked me to blurb it, which made me feel extremely important. They've chosen to put this book in the Creative Commons, so you can read it for free at the link in the description, as well as the rest of the Zeitgeist of Pop Culture series, which covers everything from Warhammer to Bluey to Stardew Valley. But if you do want a print copy or to support a...
Okay, so we're just going to stop her right there. That is, I mean, that's awful. That is one of the worst takes on alignment that I've seen in a very long time. I mean, it is god awful. And I think the worst part about it is Pointy Hat is just a morally relativistic clown show who wants to crap all over the very concept of you saying that what I did is wrong. And yeah, he doesn't understand alignment, but at least he's coming at this from some kind of weird, more, postmodernist moralistic perception. Ginny D is simply coming at this from a perspective of, I don't know how to read words. And she even admitted in the beginning, oh, the book says the exact opposite of what I'm saying. And she, ironically, again, almost made her best point by accident and then failed to make that point in favor of more or less just saying objectively false things. But guys, this is what it's read the books. Okay. All of this can be boiled down to 2 major problems that exist in the modern player base. Problem 1 is they do everything backwards. They're not trying to leave this world behind into a fantastical world and to experience that fantastical world through a character that lives in it who is not them and is nothing like them. They are trying to project themselves and this world into a fantasy world to fulfill their fantasies from this world, doing it totally backwards. Every character is them instead of them playing every character. And the second is hand-waving rules without reading them, actually not reading what you're talking about first. And she even has 2 PhDs who wrote a book who apparently didn't bother to read the source material they were trying to comment on. And that's just sad. So anyway, what do you guys think? Like I said, I'm feeling a little under the weather, and I may have gotten a little more irritated and combative than I normally would in one of these reaction videos, but you can bet your last dollar that this is showing up tomorrow in Intelligence as a Dump Stat. It's kind of funny. Everybody will hear about this in IADS before they see this video, because this one will probably go live Wednesday. But anyway, you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. How bad did Ginny D just blow it all over the place this time? And I'll see you guys on the next one.